My name is Claire Harmon. I'm 32 years old, an emergency room nurse, and a single mom. I've held people together in the worst moments of their lives: cracked ribs, severed arteries, the kind of fear that turns a person's face white. I thought that made me prepared for anything. I wasn't prepared for my sister. I wasn't prepared for what she did to my daughter at Thanksgiving dinner, in our parents' house, while the whole family sat 10 feet away eating pie. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand who Maya is before I tell you what happened to her. Maya is 9 years old, and she has her father's eyes, that particular shade of gray that shifts to green depending on the light. Her dad, Kevin, passed away from a heart condition when she was 6. She doesn't talk about it much anymore, but she carries it. I see it in the way she sometimes goes quiet in the middle of laughing, like she remembered something and had to set it gently back down. What Maya does talk about constantly, endlessly, with more passion than most adults I know, is science. Specifically, space. She could tell you the distance between Jupiter and the sun before she could tie her own shoes. She has a poster above her bed that she's had since she was 4, a photograph of the Milky Way, and she falls asleep looking at it every night. 3 months before Thanksgiving, Maya started building a scale model of the solar system for the regional junior science fair. She used foam balls, acrylic paint, LED string lights, fishing wire, and a wooden base her grandfather helped her cut and sand. She worked on it every single weekend. She kept a notebook where she recorded measurements, tested lighting arrangements, and wrote little facts about each planet in her careful, looping handwriting. She won first place, not just at the school level, the regional level. The judges called her presentation remarkable for her age. She came home holding that blue ribbon like it was a piece of the sky. She called the model her universe. She was so proud of it that she asked if she could bring it to Thanksgiving so the family could see it. She wanted to show her grandparents, her cousins, everyone. I almost said no. Something in the back of my mind said no. But she looked at me with those gray-green eyes and said, "Mom, I worked so hard. I just want everyone to see it." I packed it carefully in bubble wrap and put it in the back seat of the car like it was made of glass. Now, about my sister Renee. Renee is 29, 3 years younger than me, and she has spent most of her adult life in quiet competition with a version of me she invented in her own head. When I got into nursing school, she told people it was because I couldn't handle a real degree. When Kevin and I got married, she wore a white dress to the wedding, not ivory, white. When Maya was born, Renee spent the first year making comments about how I was doing too much and how Kevin seemed checked out. Kevin had been battling a heart condition no one could see, but Renee saw a window and she talked through it. After Kevin died, things got slightly better between us on the surface. Renee turned her energy toward her own life, her husband Doug, her 2 kids Tyler and Avery, a marketing coordinator job she'd had for 4 years. But underneath, nothing had really changed. The jealousy was just resting. 6 weeks before Thanksgiving, Renee was let go from her job. Budget cuts, they told her, but from what Doug had quietly mentioned to my dad, the real reason involved some kind of conflict with her manager that had been building for months. Renee, of course, told everyone it was because the company didn't appreciate her contributions. She was home all day, every day, stewing in it. I should have seen what was coming. I really should have. Thanksgiving morning started the way it always did. My mother called at 8 a.m. to remind me that dinner was at 1 o'clock and not to be late. She's been doing this for 15 years. I've never once been late. I pulled up to my parents' house in Columbus with Maya in the front seat, the model buckled into the back like a second child, 40 minutes early. My father came out to help carry things in. He's 64, quiet, the kind of man who expresses love by holding a door open and filling your gas tank when you're not looking. He saw the model and whistled low. "She make this herself?" he asked me quietly. "Every single piece," I told him. He set it on the side table in the living room, where there was space away from the foot traffic, and spent 5 minutes looking at each planet while Maya explained them to him. He asked her questions. Real ones. She lit up the way only kids do when an adult actually listens. My mother came in from the kitchen wiping her hands on a dish towel, looked at the model for 2 seconds and said, "Oh, that's cute. Maya, wash your hands before you touch anything in here." Maya nodded and disappeared toward the bathroom. I watched my mother go back to the kitchen and told myself not to let it bother me. It always bothered me. Renee arrived at noon with Doug and the kids. She blew through the front door like she owned the place, a store-bought pie in each hand, Tyler and Avery already loud and running. Doug trailed behind her with a bag of wine he hadn't been asked to bring. his expression the one he'd been wearing for years, a man quietly calculating the cost of his choices. "Claire," Renee said, doing that thing where she looked me up and down in a single sweep. "You look tired. Are they working you too hard?" "Nice to see you too, Renee." She spotted the model on the side table and paused. Something moved across her face so quickly I almost missed it. Her eyes went from the blue ribbon pinned to the base, to Maya, who had just come back down the hall. The look was brief, but I know my sister's face. That flicker was not pride, it was not warmth. It was calculation. "Wow," she said, loudly, turning to the room. "Look at this thing. Maya, your mom must have spent a fortune helping you." Maya blinked. "I built it myself." "Of course you did," Renee said, smiling in a way that said she didn't believe it, and moved on. "I should have taken the model back to the car right then. I know that now. I had the thought and I let my mother's voice in my head override it. Don't make a scene, don't be paranoid, don't ruin the holiday." So I let it go. I helped set the table and told myself I was overthinking things. Dinner was what it always was. My mother talked about Tyler's travel baseball team and Avery's dance recitals. She asked Maya exactly one question the entire meal. "Are you still doing that science stuff?" And then turned back to Renee before Maya could fully answer. I watched my daughter's face absorb the dismissal the way she always did, quietly, without making it anyone else's problem. That resilience in her made me proud and broke my heart at the same time. After dinner, the adults drifted to the living room. My dad turned on the game. Doug sat beside him looking relieved to have something to stare at. I was in the kitchen helping my mother with dishes when I heard Tyler and Avery running upstairs. Maya had gone up a few minutes before them, asking to use the upstairs bathroom. The house got quieter. I don't know exactly how much time passed. Maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20. I was drying a casserole dish when Renee came into the kitchen holding her phone. Her expression was strange, bright, in a way that didn't match anything. "You should come see this," she said. "See what?" Maya's being so dramatic. She bumped her little project off the table and now she's acting like... I dropped the dish towel. The living room was empty. I went to the side table first. The model was gone. The space where it had been was empty except for a faint ring on the wood from the base. I heard it then, from the base of the stairs. A sound I knew the way I knew my own heartbeat, my daughter crying. Not the small, polite crying she did when she was tired or frustrated. The kind of crying that means something has broken inside her that didn't break easily. I took the stairs 2 at a time. Maya was sitting at the top, her back against the wall, her knees pulled to her chest. Her face was red and wet, and she was holding something in both hands, one of the small foam planets, Jupiter. Its painted surface cracked down the middle. "Baby." I crouched in front of her. "What happened? Where's the model?" She couldn't get words out at first. She shook her head, pressing Jupiter to her chest. Tyler appeared in the hallway behind her, and I caught the edge of his expression before he wiped it clean, the residue of something like guilt, or the early awareness that he was in the presence of consequences. Avery was behind him. She was holding her phone with both hands, the screen still lit. My stomach caved in before I even moved. Renee appeared at the bottom of the stairs, leaning against the banister. Her voice floated up, easy and unbothered. "Claire, I just bumped into the table, that's all. It's not like I did it on purpose. You really shouldn't have put it somewhere so unstable." Maya's head came up slowly. Her voice, when it finally came out, was barely above a whisper. She didn't bump it, she picked it up. I looked at Avery's phone. The screen had gone dark. I looked at Tyler, who found something intensely interesting on the floor. "Avery." My voice came out lower than I expected. "What's on your phone?" Avery looked at her mother at the bottom of the stairs. Renee's expression shifted, still calm, but watchful now, the way it gets when she's deciding what angle to take. "It was just a video," she said. "It's nothing. Everyone's totally overreacting." I held out my hand to Avery. Avery looked at her mother again. Renee gave the smallest shake of her head. I turned back to Maya and helped her to her feet, keeping one arm around her. She was still shaking. She pressed Jupiter against her side like she could hold the rest of the model together by holding onto one piece of it. When I came downstairs, my mother was standing in the kitchen doorway, expression tight. Doug was still on the couch with my dad, both of them pretending they couldn't hear any of this. "Where is it?" I asked Renee directly. "On the porch," she said. "I set it down and it just things break, Claire. She's 9, she'll make another one." I went to the back porch. The model was on the floor in pieces. Not the scattered pieces of something dropped. The kind of pieces that mean hands were involved, not gravity. The wooden base had separated from the frame. The LED light string had been pulled loose. 3 of the planets were cracked. 2 were missing entirely. The blue ribbon was still attached to the base, but it had been folded in half, crumpling the text. Maya appeared behind me. I heard her breath catch. She walked past me and crouched on the floor, picking up pieces the way you pick up something after an accident, the specific, gentle movements of a person who still believes the damage might be reversible if they're careful enough. She picked up Saturn's ring, which had snapped in 2. She held both halves together and looked at them. She didn't say a word. That silence was worse than screaming. I took a photograph, then another. Then I took photographs of every piece. When I came back inside, Renee was at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, talking to my mother in a low voice. They both looked up when I entered. "Claire," my mother said, "it was an accident. You're going to make this into a whole thing, aren't you?" "She spent 3 months building that," I said. Kids bounced back. "Show me the video," I said to Renee. "What video?" "The one Avery filmed." "Show me." Renee set her glass down. Something moved behind her eyes, not guilt, not remorse. Annoyance. The look of someone who expected to manage this and is irritated that it's taking longer than anticipated. "There's no video," she said. "Avery was just messing around on her phone. You can't just..." "Then you won't mind showing me." "I'm not showing you anything. You're not a cop, Claire. You're my sister, and you need to calm down. You touched my daughter's property, and you destroyed it, in front of your children. And one of them filmed it." "Oh, for God's sake," Renee stood up. "It was a science project. It was foam balls and Christmas lights. I'm sorry I bumped the table. I'm sorry it broke, but the way you're acting right now is insane. You're going to traumatize Maya more than any broken." "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare talk to me about traumatizing my daughter." The kitchen went silent. My mother looked between us. Doug appeared in the doorway, read the room, and disappeared again. Then, from behind me, came Maya's voice, quiet and clear. "You didn't bump it. You picked it up and you said it was stupid. Tyler held my arms and you dropped it on the floor and you laughed. And then you said nobody cares about some dumb science project and that Grandma didn't even want to see it." The words fell into the room like stones into still water. Renee's expression shifted in a way I'd never seen before on her face. Not remorse. Something closer to the awareness that she'd misjudged how much Maya would say out loud. My mother made a sound. "Maya, sweetheart, I'm sure that's not exactly..." "That's exactly what happened," Maya said. She was standing very still. She was still holding Jupiter's cracked shell in both hands. I tried to get away and Tyler wouldn't let go of my arms and Avery was laughing and filming it and I kept saying stop and nobody stopped. The air left the room. My father appeared in the doorway now, his face pale in a way I hadn't seen since Kevin's funeral. Renee opened her mouth. Closed it. Looked at my mother. My mother straightened. "Children exaggerate when they're upset. Maya, you know your aunt would never..." "Patricia." My father's voice. Low, unusual. He almost never used my mother's name. "Stop talking." My mother stopped. I looked at my daughter standing there holding a broken planet, and something settled in me that wasn't anger anymore. It was colder than anger. It was the part of me that handles a crash cart at 2 a.m. without shaking the part that clears everything except what needs to happen next. I got Maya's coat, I got her backpack. "We're leaving," I said. Renee took a step forward. "Claire, you're being ridiculous. We're family. You don't just walk out on Thanksgiving because some toy broke." "She's 9 years old," I said. She said stop. She said it more than once. "Your children held her arms while you did this, and then you came downstairs and lied to my face." I looked at her for a long moment. "I'm not walking out on family. You decided today what family means to you. I'm just listening." I took Maya's hand and we walked out the front door. In the car, Maya sat with her seatbelt on, Jupiter still in her hands. She stared out the window the whole way home. I reached over once and squeezed her knee. She put her hand on top of mine and held it there. When we got home, I made her hot chocolate. She sat at the kitchen table while I heated milk and tried to keep my hands steady. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Why did Tyler hold my arms?" "I wasn't doing anything." I set the mug in front of her and sat down across from her. "Because what your aunt asked him to do was wrong. And sometimes people do wrong things because someone they trust tells them it's okay. That doesn't make it okay." She nodded slowly. She said nobody cared about my project. She was wrong. She said Grandma didn't even want to see it. I reached across the table and covered her hands with mine. She was wrong about that too. And even if it were true and it isn't one person who doesn't see your work, doesn't cancel out everything it is. You built something real. You won a real competition. Nobody can take that. She looked down at Jupiter in her hands. She took it. The words hit me like a physical weight. I went to my room and called my friend Deb, who had been a family law paralegal before she moved into healthcare administration. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, take photos of Maya's arms tonight. If there are any marks from Tyler holding her, document them. And get that video. I'm a nurse. I know how to document. I went back to Maya and gently asked her to show me her arms. There were faint reddish impressions on both forearms, the kind that come from a child's grip rather than an adult's, but visible. I photographed them quietly, told her it was just to make sure she wasn't hurt. She asked if I was going to show the police. I hadn't said anything about the police. She'd thought of it herself. Maybe, I said. Would that be okay with you? She thought about it. If it makes sure Avery deletes the video, I don't want people laughing at me. That's a very good reason, I told her. I spent the evening on the phone, first with Deb, who walked me through exactly what to say to a police non-emergency line. Then with my father, who called me at 9 o'clock, his voice thick with something I hadn't heard from him in years. I'm sorry, he said. I heard what Maya said and I should have said something right then. I didn't. I just stood there. I didn't tell him it was fine because it wasn't, but I told him I heard him. That was the most honest thing I could offer. Your mother thinks you're overreacting, he said. I know. A pause. I don't think that, and I want to help if there's a way I can help. I told him there was. I asked him if he had seen anything, and he described what he'd noticed Renee near the side table before dinner. Renee suggesting the kids go to the back porch to play. Small things individually. A pattern together. I asked him to write it down. He did. 2 days later, I went to the police station. I brought Maya. I brought the photographs of the destroyed model, the photographs of Maya's arms, and a screenshot Deb had managed to obtain one of Renee's cousins, who had been appalled when Avery posted the video to the family group chat, had sent it to her mom, who had sent it to Deb before Renee could get it taken down. 15 seconds of footage. Maya saying stop, her arms held. Renee lifting the model deliberately off the table. The officer watched the video twice. His jaw was tight when he looked up. How old is your daughter? 9. He nodded slowly. We'll open a report. The next week was heavy and strange. Maya went back to school. She wore long sleeves the first few days, even though the marks had faded. Her teacher pulled me aside and told me she'd been quieter than usual. I told her what had happened, briefly, and the teacher's face did something complicated and then settled into resolve. She said she'd keep an eye out. On the 4th day back, Maya came home and told me her friend Emma had saved her a seat at lunch every day that week without being asked. She said she heard something happened at my Thanksgiving, Maya said. She didn't ask about it. She just saved the seat. I thought about that for a long time after Maya went to bed. A week after the police report, the family group chat exploded. My mother had apparently told several relatives that I was pressing charges against Renee over a broken toy, and the responses were a cascade I couldn't fully follow. Some relatives sided with my mother. Some were quietly supportive in private messages. One of my aunts, my mother's younger sister Carol, sent me a voice message that was 2 minutes of steady, clear-eyed fury on Maya's behalf. I saved that message. Renee posted a statement in the chat. She said the model had been an accident, that Maya had been distraught out of proportion, and that I had always struggled to handle conflict in a healthy way. She said she loved Maya and wished the family could move forward. She did not apologize. I didn't respond in the chat. I had stopped expecting anything from her. The point was no longer about changing Renee. It never really had been. My mother called 3 times. I let 2 of them go to voicemail. On the 3rd, I picked up. You're destroying this family, she said. Renee destroyed Maya's project, I said. She held Maya's arms down while she did it. Maya asked her to stop and she didn't, and then she lied about it to my face. You have always been like this, my mother said. Dramatic, you turn everything into a catastrophe. I had heard some version of this my entire childhood. I used to let it land. That day it passed through me like air. Mom, I said, I have a recording that shows what happened. I have a police report. I have documented injuries. If you want to call that dramatic, that's your right. But I'm not going to apologize for protecting my daughter. À silence. She's my granddaughter, my mother finally said. Then act like it. I hung up. 3 weeks later, Renee was formally cited for misdemeanor destruction of property and a charge related to the unlawful restraint, both of which the DA had elevated slightly given Maya's age and the documented, recorded nature of the act. Her attorney tried to characterize it as a family dispute and argue for dismissal. The judge, who had watched the video in chambers, disagreed. Community service, mandatory counseling, a fine, a formal no-contact order protecting Maya for 2 years. Renee stood in the courtroom and said, through her attorney, that she regretted the impact her actions had on the family. Not that she regretted her actions. The impact. I noticed the difference. The judge may have too, because her expression didn't soften. When we walked out of the courthouse, my father was waiting in the parking lot. He hadn't come inside, but he was there. He looked older than I remembered. He opened his arms and Maya walked into them without hesitating, and I watched him hold his granddaughter and say, very quietly into her hair, "I should have been there for you. I'm going to do better." Maya leaned back and looked at him. "You're here now," she said. He cried in the parking lot of a courthouse in broad daylight. That's something I'll remember about him for the rest of my life. Renee's social media went quiet after that. Doug, I heard through the family grapevine, had moved in with his brother. Tyler and Avery were with Renee during the week and with Doug on weekends. I had no contact with any of them, and I didn't seek it. Maya started a new project in December. She decided she wanted to build something for the state-level science fair, a step up from the regional competition she'd won. This one was about light refraction through different atmospheric densities. I didn't entirely understand it, but she explained it to me 3 times patiently, and by the 3rd time I almost did. She rebuilt her solar system model too. She didn't do it for any competition. She did it because she wanted to. She bought new foam balls, new paint, new lights. She spent 2 Saturdays on it. When it was finished, she stood back and looked at it and said, almost to herself, "This one's better." I asked her if she wanted to bring it anywhere. To show anyone. She thought about it. "Grandpa," she said. "I want to show Grandpa." So we drove to my father's house, not my parents' house, because he had quietly moved into a small apartment 2 towns over in January, and my parents were in the early stages of a separation no one had officially named yet. He answered the door with his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, and Maya walked in carrying the model in both arms. She spent an hour explaining every planet to him. He sat at his kitchen table and listened to every word. When she got to the blue ribbon, she'd printed a new one herself, from her computer, because she'd decided the original one still belonged to her. Even if the model was gone, he touched the edge of it with one finger, very gently. "First place," he said. "Regional," Maya said. "I'm going for state this spring." He looked at her for a moment. "I believe you'll get it." She grinned. That particular grin, the one that goes all the way to her eyes, the one that's entirely Kevin's. I had to look away for a second. One evening in late January, Maya found me at the kitchen table with my laptop and my usual late-night pile of laundry I'd been meaning to fold for 3 days. She climbed into the chair next to me. "Mom. I've been thinking about something." I closed the laptop. "Tell me." She picked at the edge of the table, the way she does when she's working something out. Aunt Renee wanted me to feel like my project didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. And for a little while it worked. She looked up at me. "But now I'm building a better one, and I won a real competition, and she's just in trouble. And her family is different now." She paused. "I don't think I'm the one who lost," she said. I looked at my daughter, 9 years old, gray-green eyes, a half-finished science project on the dining room table, and a blue ribbon she'd printed herself because she knew what she'd earned. And I thought about everything I had been afraid of in the months since. Thanksgiving. Afraid she'd carry this as shame. Afraid she'd shrink. Afraid the people who should have protected her hadn't, and that she'd learned the wrong lesson from it. She had learned the right one. "No," I said. "You're definitely not the one who lost." She nodded, satisfied, and slid off the chair. "I'm going to go work on the refraction model. Emma's coming over Saturday to help me figure out the light angles. I'll order pizza," I said. She was already halfway down the hall. I sat there for a moment after she left, in the quiet of my kitchen, listening to the sound of her moving around in the next room, the small, specific sounds of a person who knows what she's working toward. The scrape of a stool, the snap of the light switch, the quiet under which I could almost hear her thinking. I'd spent the year holding people together in the worst moments of their lives. I thought that was the hardest thing there was. It turns out the hardest thing is watching someone you love get broken open, and then watching them decide on their own, without your help, on some Tuesday night in January, that they are not broken. That is also the most extraordinary thing. And I would not trade it, not for peace at any table. Not for the version of family that asks you to stay quiet in exchange for belonging. We belong to each other, Maya and I. That was always enough. I just needed the rest of the noise to clear before I could hear it properly. She called out from the other room. Mom, can you hand me the protractor? It's on the counter. I got up, found it under a dish towel, and brought it to her. She took it without looking up from her notebook, already drawing angles. Thanks, she said. Any time, I said. And I meant it in every way that it can be meant.